lips and things like that, on the face, you know, and just enjoy the painting and try to take my time with it. I like to enjoy the painting process when I do it. I don't like it to seem like it's a work, even though it is work. You know, you spend time toiling over it, but at the end of the day, a oil painting like this is going to be better than any photograph. First of all, paper is going to deteriorate over time. You know, maybe not in your, immediate lifespan, but as you get older, it's going to start fading. And then definitely by the time you're ready to pass down your family heirlooms, your photographs, to the next generation, it would have deteriorated, become fragile on photographic process. Whereas a painting, however, you can capture more of the essence of the person. And just by virtue of the way it's made out of actually crushed stone, so it's as old as the earth, billions of years old. So in theory, it can last for thousands of years. Renaissance paintings have lasted 500 to 600 years using this very same technique that I'm using. Well, very similar technique. I mean, there are some modern additions that's been added in terms of technologies that's available to the modern painter that the Renaissance artists did not have available to them, and that I do incorporate that. I painted oil. My ground on this painting is painted in oil. It's not acrylic. I use PVA Sized, which is polyvinyl acetate, to size my canvas. So it's basically archivable, and it's been scientifically proven to last for a very, very long time without deteriorating the canvas too much, and definitely without compromising the painting surface that the artist puts on the canvas. So I think I've tagged enough people. Sherry Smith. Sherry, how you doing? How you doing? Good to see you. And I met your dad Sunday at my dad's birthday party, and my prayers and sympathies go out to you, because we've lost yet another family loved one. So definitely my heart goes out to you and your family, you and Kashara, Bob Rand especially, because I know that that's her mom. And so this COVID thing is terrible, because family can't gather like they should or could. Uncle Harold, you remember that happened with him. So, but still loving you. We definitely have you in our thoughts and prayers. But glad you can come by this painting session. You can see I'm doing oil painting. I love to do one of you, Kashara, because you're a beautiful young lady. You're my cousin. And this is an oil painting. So this is something, like I said before, that can last forever. With luster, I can put all kinds of, I actually paint with many, many layers, glazes. So, it's something that can be passed on for many, many generations. Or I could paint one of your grandmother, because those pictures, when she was young, they're dated. You can't go back there again. And it's something that you can put up as a memoir for your family. So that's something great. Yeah, you would love to. So yeah, Shara, you got to get with me. Now I charge now. I charge, but I give you a lot more value than what somebody else could do if you was to pay for it. I mean, I'll give you a ton smidge of value. Because this painting, for example, this painting could be easily valued at $2,500. I mean, $2,500, $2,500, easily. As time goes by, it will just gain more value, especially as I do more paintings, because guess what? I'm a famous artist, but I have a body of work, and so as my body of work gains recognition, if this COVID-19 is over, I'll be showing more and I'll be getting more notoriety. And of course, I already have 8 big ones. You see my big paintings. So, I hope to, I think the special number to get the attention of the big curators is you need about you know, a good body of work. I say a good 50 masterpieces. So once I have that, the paintings will start going up exponentially in value. And then you'll have a Steve Foreman original. Because, you know, I do. Yes, yes, yes. You can call me anytime. You know, my phone number, all my contacts is on this page and on this post. You can always DM me. But yeah, I'll be more than happy to do a painting like this of this young lady here. She's from, I think, from Pennsylvania. And you can see I actually can put her in a genre. She's in a genre. This is actually Mount Kilimanjaro, actually Lake Victoria in Africa. So this is like this, the Garden of Eden. This is, I think, Ethiopia, Sudan. That's like in the Bible. They said that's where the Garden of Eden is supposed to be, all the way to Euphrates, all the way to the Nile. So this is the source of the Nile right here behind her. So, of course, we had a snake, and then she has a fruit. So she wanted those things in. And today what I'm going to do is I'm going to add this ring. She said, since I put this hand in, because this hand was not in the original photo that she supplied me. You know, most of this is, you know, fantasy. You know, of course, the face, she supplied me a picture of the face, but I added this hand in the fruit. That's not actually her hand there, but what I did was using this hand in my imagination, I synthesized another hand. And also, she did give me, this is actually her hand, and she wants this ring on her ring finger. So, you know, I composite these together. I composite these paintings together to get a, to make a theme. You know, it tells a story. You can look at this and you can read different levels, not only just the levels of painting that's in the actual artwork in terms of the craft of the paint, but in addition to the composition, the storytelling, it's almost like a film. It's almost like a movie, because you can start interjecting so many thoughts into the painting. Of course, she's looking directly at the viewer, and then she's holding this as though she is offering it to the viewer. So that's very nice. So that's a nice little touch that I kind of added to this portrait to bring another dimension out, you know, to bring some more interest to the portrait. So it's not just a straightforward portrait. Now also I painted the sides of this. So this is what you call a wrap design. So you don't necessarily need a frame, even though frames, I can actually do very professional frames for a fraction of the price that other professional framers do. Talking about better quality than Michael's for sure. Yeah, but anyway, anybody who would like to get their portrait or get a commission piece done, I'll be more than happy to accommodate anyone who would be interested. You know, be more than happy to accommodate, you know. And I use the best materials. Like I say, I don't use acrylic grounds. I use oil grounds. I use oil paints. And I paint in many layers, and I don't do shortcuts. And I stretch my own canvases. I build them. I don't buy them from the store, because the store uses thin canvases, you know, like 7 ounce. You know, they go by the ounce weight. The bigger the number, the thicker the ounce, the thicker the canvas. So you want a canvas that's very thick, because it's harder to puncture. And then you want a bunch of coats of primer on there. So I put like 7 coats of primer when I do acrylic. Of course, oil, basically 1 coat is almost like 3 coats. So I put 2 coats of oil, and I put 3 coats, actually I put 4 coats of PVC prime on. So PVC prime is like 2 coats of acrylic. So it's an addition of about 6 coats on this. So it takes the thickness of the canvas up from 13 gauge to about 15 or 16. So you have a pretty substantial surface that's high quality. That won't go anywhere. I mean, it will stand the test of time, and it will stand the test of environment. And the size does relate a little bit to how long it takes me. Smaller size paintings I can do faster, therefore they're a little bit cheaper. This one is 24 by 36 inches. But to tell you the truth, it is also the type of composition. It's just the face. You know, it's not like my other paintings where I have multiple faces, all kinds of complex imagery. Even though this snake, I'm going to work on this today, it's kind of complicated. And, you know, I still have to sharpen everything up in the painting. However, you know, it is what it is, you know. The labor of making it is worth the end result, because at some point in time, it's going to be a jewel. It's going to be very, very special. It's going to be something that's going to stand out. This is an original piece. You're never going to be able to buy this anywhere else. You're never going to be able to just take a photo and go to Photoshop and print some stuff out, because I print with impasto, texture. It looks artful. The painting looks like it's art. It doesn't look like it's a cheap digital printout, because that's going to be flat. And the color is going to have maybe little pixels and dots in them. And there's going to be no texture, you know. And then even if it does have texture, the texture does not agree with the model, with the shaping. You know, they're making fake brush strokes. And you can see I'm using real brushes. So these are real brush strokes. Oh, somebody's waving. Let me see who's waving here. Christopher Foreman, what's up, cousin? I got my cousins in the house. Glad you can come by, man. I'm working on this painting here of a person that I met on Facebook. Of course, if anybody needs a commissioned portrait or anything like that done, let me know. If you want to come on my live, that'd be great too, because I like to get people involved on my lives if they're brave enough. Of course, if you're not brave enough, then, or you just don't, you know, you don't want your face all over the internet, I understand that too, you know, definitely understand. So basically, you know, this basically is about 3 solid days of painting, and I'm going to say about, and you know, I see little things, so I got to touch on something. About 3 solid days of painting, and about, you know, I'll say maybe 3.5, you know. And when I say solid days, I don't even do 8-hour days. I think these are like 6-hour days, so this would be like 18 to 20 hours of work so far. It's not too bad. You know, I had my daughter's birthday was Saturday, and then of course my dad's birthday was Sunday. So, you know, so I participated in those things, so I couldn't paint on those days, and I think I started this on like Wednesday, and, you know, put in that time on those times. So now what I'm doing is something called modeling glazes. And essentially what that is that I just go in and I just paint just little thin modeling glazes into the painting. And sometimes I just see certain things that I just want to touch on, and I just touch on them. Even though I don't really want to paint on the face today, I want to paint really the background more. Focus on the snake, because the snake is not really painted. I kind of gestured it in. It's got a nice little look because I got this little white coming through on it, but that's actually not the final look I want for this. So what I'm going to do with this is I'm going to go in and I'm going to actually give it the look that I had originally intended this to have. And so that's kind of what I'm going to work on today. But like I say, if anybody out there would like to have a painting done, I am available. Just DM me or call me. My phone number is on my Facebook page. Also, eventually, I'm going to be getting a website together. I'm working on it now. Working on some websites, actually, as we speak. Some for some clients. And then, of course, one for myself. And so, once I have that, I'll have a lot of my paintings listed, you know, so that you can see them on a website, not on Facebook. Because sometimes Facebook is fickle, you know. Facebook will block and ban and do all kinds of weird stuff to you. And sometimes I just don't like that, you know. I like the consistency. I just like my pictures there. I like to put them up a certain way. I don't necessarily like the other posts. Sometimes I do post stuff myself that's kind of controversial. And then sometimes I don't want people going to my Facebook and then I post something kind of hard and then they get offended, you know. So I'd rather people go to my website. But I guess I shouldn't even post anything to a website that would offend, to Facebook, you know, because I'm a painter, you know. I don't supposed to have a political opinion or opinion about what's going on in society, I guess. You're supposed to keep that to yourself. I guess that's what people want you to do. But with stuff going on like it's going on today, that's becoming harder and harder to do. Just keeping stuff to yourself, and all kinds of really unusual things that has probably not happened very much in our society, maybe in other people's societies, but it's really strange when you start seeing things come to start affecting you on a more personal level. Well, not on a personal level, separate, I guess, except affecting what you consider your livelihood, what you consider your nation, what you consider your community, It's very, very important, I think, to engage, not to be passive, not to try to sit there and be neutral all the time, because a lot of times you're neutral and it's kind of complacency, When you see things going wrong, artists or not, whether it's going to mess with your business or not, and then maybe you don't want to do business with people that is a certain way, that's insensitive to the plight of others, or insensitive to real issues that concern you as a real human being. Some people just say, keep that to yourself. Well, that's true too, but it's everybody's a different individual. So, but I do like to focus on the painting. I do this because for painters, I do like to focus on the art. I don't know how many artists come to my Facebook. I have joined a couple of artist forums. I do kind of post to a few these lives to a few forums. However, it's really difficult to what's going on in the country, I should say, and that's what I'm really concerned about. It's real difficult to be neutral when you see basically, man, I could run for office and do a better job than some of these people. Well, I could be a better president than the current president. Now, I don't know if I could do the job of some of the other presidents. They did a pretty good job. It's pretty obvious that they might have been their cup of tea. But as it is now, it seems like the qualifications for president has gone down quite a bit. And that concerns me when it concerns oftentimes life and death. Whoever is your leader can determine whether or not certain people are going to suffer or not unnecessarily. For example, 185,000 people died of COVID-19. Died, not sick. No longer here. That's life and death, man. We have to start, acting sometime. At some point, you have to go from trying to please everybody and be Mr. Nice Guy to saying, I think I see a clear and present danger with the current state of affairs. And if we don't do something about it, I believe some more people are going to get hurt. At some point, a conscientious person anyway would start a conversation at least to get something going where we can get some resolve, get people voting differently because this country voted for a known racist. And not only was a known racist, he was making fun of handicapped people. He was telling the police that's now killing people at will, choking them down, shooting them, and now you got vigilantes in the street. I don't like these protesters. They're exercising their First Amendment right, so you exercising your Second Amendment right to carry a gun. But You want to be able to carry your gun, but you don't want other people to be able to protest. It's kind of like, to me, you're a hypocrite, because if you want to be able to carry your gun and nobody can tell you how big your gun is or how powerful it is, you just want to be able to carry it into like the Walmart. You want to carry your gun into any convenience store, pump your gas or whatever. I mean, I saw a guy over in Mechanicsville with his 45, like a World War II 45 on his hip. 45 handgun, big caliber handgun. You know, the thing bore a hole through you. Now, what do you need with that in Mechanicsville, Virginia, at a local fast stop, you know, like mom and pop gas station, pumping gas, you know, with regular people on a weekend, doing weekend stuff. And of course, the thing about it, he had a red pickup truck, and the pickup truck looked like it had like a trash bag on the window, so he didn't have the windows even repaired good. It looked like he should have spent the money that he spent on the gun to repair the trash bags he had all over his windows that was broken out. And probably the windows is broken out because the guy's got trouble. You know, generally, if you got not one window, I mean your whole back window, your side windows, the only window that wasn't was probably his windshield. That tells me you got some domestic problems. And it might have something to do with the fact you're walking around with a 45 on your hips in the convenience stores and whatnot, you know? Got an attitude problem, man. So, I don't know, man. It's just, I didn't see this all through the 1990s, 2000, even early 2000. Did not see a lot of this stuff. You know what I mean? You see the country guys with the gun racks. You know it's deer season, you know, hunting season. I understand that. I got family from the country that go hunting. And you know, my Uncle Henry used to like to hunt. I understand the gun rack. I don't understand walking up into Lowe's or somewhere with a Colt 45 with a bunch of clips on it. You know, go on and pick up some nails and some screws, man. That don't make sense. It just don't, man. You weren't in Desert Shield or Desert Storm. You're not in Iraq or Iran. You've probably never been in the military before in your life. But yet you're walking around like the big bad wolf, terrorizing your local citizenry. You know, the people got kids in their car. You know, dog, cat, wife, everything. And they said, "Oh, Daddy, look at the guy over there with this big old John Wayne gun on." You know? And hurry up and pump your gas so we can get out of here. You know, what father want to be with his family and then his kids are telling them stuff like that? So this is a new phenomenon. This is new. And a lot of times people say this stuff happened because of Donald Trump. I don't think so. I think it happened because Barack Obama. I think a lot of people got scared of this very powerful black man in a very powerful position that spoke a certain way, was very proper, very dignified, kind of like thought a little too much of himself. I think a lot of certain people think, well, this black man think a little too much of himself. I know he's kind of Harvard educated, but he's kind of uppity. Now, I know a lot of so-called pro-black people also. They say, well, what Barack Obama do for me? Look, the president don't supposed to do something for one person or one demographic of 360 million people. They don't. They don't supposed to do anything for anybody in particular. What you're supposed to do is pass policy that helps categories of people. And what you try to do is pass policies that are not going to be considered biased to any one particular group or another. Next. Now, for the history of this country, however, a lot of stuff was biased, and it did benefit the group, a certain group of people. But of course, civil rights came and tried to rectify some of that. And to a certain degree, it did. it did rectify some of that to a certain degree. But then to another degree, it didn't. Now, people who were positive and took advantage of programs, first of all, you had to be aware of them. Those people move forward, but you can't be a person who slept through high school, got bad grades in high school, messed around, fooled around with some stuff out on the street and got yourself in jail a couple of times and in trouble with the law, and then expect the same thing that somebody else who made a lot of sacrifice and worked very hard and worked 2 jobs through college to try to get into a different job capacity or build a set of skills that would get them into a different income bracket. Now, you can't compare those individuals. And if you were not doing those things, say, well, you don't need I hear people say, you don't need a college. A lot of times people that go to college, I see some jealousy right there. What do you mean just because you go to college don't mean you're smart? Well, you've been educated. You've been educated in somebody else's education. Yeah. Okay, so I know that. Now I'm going to learn something else. So now I'm going to get say, for example, I'm going to learn about Africa. Or now I'm going to learn about Oceania. Or now I'm going to learn about Asia. Just because you got mostly European education don't mean that at any point in time when you become aware that there's other things, why can't you just expand that education? But nobody's closed-minded. Nobody. It's kind of it's kind of arrogant to assume that somebody else is closed-minded and you're open-minded simply because you don't have a degree, a higher education degree, and because you can Google something, somehow you're smarter than the guy who actually did dedicated classes. He was also Googling, but he was also reading books and getting exams and staying up to 2, 3 in the morning trying to make the grade, and getting disciplined, learning how to do surgery, learning how to officiate in court and be a doctor or a lawyer or an engineer or an artist. Whatever that person's forte was, that person dedicated some serious time. They could have been doing something else. They could have been at home having babies. Oftentimes, a lot of people who get higher education, especially the young ladies, they don't have children. They don't have as many children as the woman who stayed home, did not get a college education, but she had children. I mean, and on one hand, people say, well, children, that was kind of like a burden. I was a mistake. Well, you were not in control, but it don't necessarily mean that that person didn't want children. Maybe they would have been in control, But there are sacrifices that people make. These things are conscious. These things are things that people do. So I've been seeing a lot of this stuff. This thing has gone full circle. People say, well, the Democrat and Republican Party is the same thing. No, they're not. They're not the same thing. One party has been more sensitive to the plight of minority groups, the plight of people who are on the outskirts for the last 60 years. Not since forever, the parties switch. Look at the demographics. The people who were the Confederates are now the Republican Party. The people who were the Confederates were the ones who wanted slavery. The people who are racist today, who seem to be wanting slavery to come back, are the people in the geography of the states that were the Confederate states. So don't look at the name of the parties, because parties can switch names. I mean, for example, a football player, LeBron James, started out with Cleveland. Now he plays for Los Angeles. You can switch parties and groups all day long, but you got to look at the actual people. the jacked up people who've been the people that's basically mostly white supremacist agenda people, have always been from the geography of the southern states, the states of the Confederacy. The people who put up all those statues, And then the states that people make fun of, like the one that these boys got killed in by this gun nut who decided he was just going to show up at somebody else's. I mean, he showed up at somebody else's protest. He didn't, they say, well, he got chased. No, he came there to instigate. He went to their event to provoke a situation and was successful at playing cat and mouse. And then once the mouse took the cheese, he just simply leveled the daggone trap on him and shot him with his gun and tried to make it look like he was the victim. The reality, the dude was looking for exactly that scenario to take place. He'd been training for that. He was training for that exact scenario. So I don't mean to talk political because I don't want to, because I want to focus on paint. But at the same time, I will talk political because there's more to life than just painting. There's more to life than trying to be political. Right now, everybody's trapped in their house. You can't even go do normal things like birthday parties and, have decent funerals for your loved ones because, why? Because COVID-19, because somebody did, SARS came through, Ebola came through. Most people didn't even know that these pandemics was out there. It struck a lot of countries real hard. It did not strike America hard because we had a team of people in Washington that was keen to help minimize that. Well, Trump fired all those people. He fired them in 2017 and in 2018, and almost right on cue, seemed like, in 2019, 2020, 2 years later, here it is, a serious pandemic, and we had no fast response to it whatsoever. Okay, so you say, well, whose fault is that? Well, the person that, there used to be a saying with a certain president, the buck stops here. And what the buck stops here means is I'm responsible because I'm the boss. I'm the boss. In other words, if there's a problem, blame me. But if there's a success, also blame me. Not if it's good, I did that. If it's bad, somebody else did that. That's easy. That's called a cop-out, man. That's an easy little thing to do. Is that you take the credit when it's good, and then you don't take the credit when it's bad. Well, that's kind of like a shyster mentality, kind of like a common person, a sleazebag mentality. But people with true grit and integrity, what they do is when they mess up, they admit it. And then they try to do something, they try to fight harder to rectify the wrong. They don't pass the buck, the buck stops here. They pass the buck to somebody else and say, oh, the Democrats did that. Well, they're not the ones in the White House. They're not the ones fired with the administration, in charge of the administration. The mayor is responsible for the protest. Well, you're the one, you got the cop right there. He's called William Barr. Somebody ain't doing something right. And he's the top cop in the country. He's supposed to be out there making sure people don't get shot down in the streets, people don't get rolled over in cars while they're protesting. He's supposed to be making sure of that kind of stuff. He needs to make sure that people can exercise their number one, First Amendment right to protest. Number two, carry your stupid gun into the local daggone convenience store. Now, should we all be walking around like Wyatt Earp now, since we have a new norm now? Okay, we already wearing masks. That's one new norm. But even before that, we're going around like Wyatt Earp and the Sundance Kid and all this kind of junk now. Everybody got to be strapped. Everybody got to get a gun. I'm on my concealed carry permit. Concealed carry permit. Well, why you need why you got to hide it? Then after you hide it, well, you up in Walmart now with it. You know, put a box of cereal in your cart. I mean, the junk don't make any sense. I mean, just let's say it, the emperor ain't wearing no clothes. Okay? That's all to it. Let's stop trying to fix it up, try to make it work. The emperor's walking down the street buck naked. Okay? That's what's happening. If somebody got to call a shot, then the little innocent kid was the one that finally said, hey, why is the emperor walking around buck naked? Because somebody told the emperor that if you can't see these clothes, that you're not worthy. You know, you get a person along a certain train of thought, whether it's the truth or not. If one person accepts it, the emperor, he's the boss, and that's what's happened. One person accepted. Now, Donald Trump got everybody thinking they could just go around and just blast people away because they have a different political outlook than the others. One says Black Lives Matter. One says all life matter. Okay, well, since you think all life matter, I have the right now to come to your town or to come to your protest with some rifles and intimidate you. Then after I do that, I can start shooting you if you get a little upset about that. Of course, you unarmed. You know, it's some bull crap. This ain't the way. This is not the path to the future. This is not a sustainable lifestyle. It's just not. It's not something that you can take this to the most highest level of perfection. We're going back to the cowboy days. And what happened with the Sundance, with Billy the Kid? Most of these dudes are getting shot in the back. They were cowards. You know, what happened to Wild Bill Cody? He got shot in the back. He was excellent with a gun, but he wasn't good enough to have eyes in the back of his head. So what happened to him was he got shot in the back because he was too good to get shot in the front. I mean, what happened to Jesse James? He got shot in the back because he was too good to get shot in the front. So instead of having your human nature get better and more noble, human nature descends and gets worse. And it just gets worse and worse and worse. And the next thing you know, what you have is you have a society that's immoral. And that's basically what we have now. The society is it now? A lot of times people think immoral is just, okay, the homosexual, because there are I saw this in schools. I saw this in the schools. I said, what the world's going on? I said this myself. Not to say that, I'm not saying that homosexuality is right or wrong. I'm not making a judgment on that. That's for other people to decide. I'm an artist. All I do is paint. I can care less with anybody else. But some people were saying, what in the world's going on? There's banners, gay banners all up in the high schools and middle schools and stuff. Well, that also contributed to Donald Trump and the surge of the Republican Party, because America, let's face it, we started off as Puritans here, and that's the culture. And that culture says that junk is abomination. You know, I mean, I'm just going to say it just like that. And you cannot have that kind of pass and just all of a sudden make a law or all of a sudden pass some new rules and expect people to just, okay, that's what we're doing from now on, just take it. That's not how people work. People don't work like that. You know, all of a sudden, and then a lot of times when when black folks just because you black, I'm going to just say this because I ain't never heard nobody say this in public, but I'm going to say it. Just because you're black don't mean that everything else, and just because you're supporting black people and racism or not being racist towards black people, don't mean that everybody else should be supported, okay? And that sounds messed up. People say, well, why do you think that black should be supported and everybody else? Because a black person can't go and to go to some place and say, okay, I'm going to go and change my skin color. I'm going to be, when I come out of this procedure, I will no longer be black. I'm going to be white. I'm going to be from Europe. Black person can't do that. A black person say, look, I'm going to go to this event, but I'm not going to be dressed like a black person. I'm going to be dressed like, somebody from Europe or somewhere else. And hopefully what will happen is no one will be different towards me or racist towards me, because they won't see my blackness because I'm dressed differently. See, a homosexual person can do that. You can be white, you can be black, you can be Asian, you can be Hispanic, you can be whatever you want. But if you don't tell nobody that you're homosexual and you don't behave a certain way, nobody's going to know. Therefore, they cannot be prejudiced toward you. They cannot slight you. They cannot do things to you that's going to cause you to be penalized. However, as a black person, if you're in a job interview and the person sees your name, and say you have a name like mine is Steve Foreman. Sounds like a white guy's name. Don't sound like a black. My name is not like Leroy Brown, Tyrone Johnson. That's not my name. So you can kind of tell, certain names, who they are. But I've been in interviews like that, and person swore that I was not, and the way I talk on the phone, they swore that I was not black. And I got called in for the interview. Oh, we really, really impressed with your resume. It's excellent. You're absolutely the person we're looking for. Oh, well, thank you very much. All this. And they assumed that I was white. Now, I know that they assumed that I was white because I tested it. And, I said a couple of things to kind of fool them a little bit, to make them think, okay, does this person think I'm white? So I say a certain thing a certain way. And sure enough, they respond exactly the way I thought. So this person thinks I'm white. So they're going to be in for a surprise when I come into the interview. But at least I got an interview, because I got tired of getting turned down when you put on the application. If this country is truly going to be non-racist, take all race information off all applications immediately. I'm going to say it again. Take all race information off of bank loans, mortgages, college examinations, college acceptances, job, anything that has to do with anything. Take it off. Stop making demographics based on ethnicity. Stop it. Okay, if we do that, then I would say we don't live in a white supremacist society. But why do we do that? Now, some countries, let's say in China. In China, do you have to put on an application that you are, black or white? Something, because everybody is homogenized there. So no, you don't have to do that there, because they assume that the average person is Chinese. Now recently, there are more immigrants coming to China. So they may have something like that going, but those kind of things are set up for one reason and one reason only. So they can be racist towards you, because now they have a piece of paper that says, this is somebody that we don't want. And what we want to do is, instead of putting ourselves in a compromising situation where we have to explain to this person why we don't want to hire them, we can just send them a letter that says, sorry, but this position has already been filled. And of course, what most people do is fill out the rest of the sentence and say, by a white person, even though I might have a master's degree or a PhD and the other person has a bachelor's degree. And then I even seen situations where a person working in the medical field, I know people who work in the medical field that's black and white, and the person has the black person has all of the proper degrees and qualification. However, the white person didn't have their degrees yet, but they got the management job. And then they were able to get this management job, go to school for it, while occupying the job and not actually being qualified for the job. Now, it wasn't a doctor, but it was, say, a nurse. Let's just say that. Now, these things happen right here in my city, all over the country. And because it's a certain person, because maybe they know somebody, I mean, who knows exactly why? You have to assume that they know somebody on the inside, and that person's looking out for them. Most likely that person has been in authority for a while. Therefore, they can kind of look out for their friends, and that person's got the job. So a lot of times you go on jobs and you already know that job is filled by somebody. And all they're doing is just putting it out there just for show, and they go and hire their friend in that job capacity. And that person that's in power, this is the group that's always been in power, white males or white females. Let's not exclude them just because they're females. I know females has not had the same power that the white males have, but the thing about that is that a white male, female, the male brings his check home to the white female. She benefits from that big old paycheck and all that big white guy salary. I mean, she's in society, you know. She's at the country club with him. You know, she's not like sitting on the sideline somewhere. When he goes to Acapulco, he takes his wife with him. So, so you can't just say, oh, the women haven't had their chance. Yes, they have. They had it through their husbands. They had their chance through their husbands. They had all of the same benefits that the man has had, because that's your husband. It's not the same as nobody in that household making any dividends, because they all are black, the man and the woman. You know, at least you have the man in that particular capacity. Though he's a white male, he's still your husband, and he's still bringing the money home to you. And you're going to Strawbridge and Clothiers and Macy's, and you're buying the Louis Vuitton pocketbooks and all that stuff. So it's kind of hypocritical, and it's kind of false. I'm going to just say false. It's not really, it's also, wrong to compare a person who is, and I know I'm sounding bad for this, but it's not the same thing, because it affects your culture differently. Racism affects your culture more than sexism. It does. Now, both are wrong. I'm not saying that sexism should be allowed. I'm not saying that. I'm saying that racism is harder than sexism. It's always been for a certain group of people. You just ain't gonna get around it. It has been like that. So you have to start addressing systematic racism in the United States. You have to. Now, also, before 2000, this country was a salt and pepper country. I'm just going to say it. When I say salt and pepper, it was black and white. It was not a lot. There was Puerto Ricans, maybe a few other groups, and of course in California there were Chinese immigrants that come over in the 1800s, and most of those people kind of stayed in Chinatown. Of course, they dealt with racism their way, you know, according to their experience migrating to this country, and every group does. However, it's this country has pursued other groups to kind of balance blacks. I mean, think about this. Ever since emancipation, You had the Lusitania, you had the Titanic, you had all these ships bringing people from Europe saying, okay, we're immigrating. You know, we accept immigrants, but you weren't bringing people from Africa. We had African Americans here. The same policies was not open for people from Africa to migrate here for a better life. Why? Were you trying to balance the number of African Americans here? Because it's a democracy, and in a democracy, the majority group wins. So if everybody looks speaking English, even though they might come from Poland and originally speaking Polish, or maybe coming from Germany and originally speaking German, or Italian and originally speaking Italian, they assimilate into the power culture, which is white Anglo-Saxon from Europe, from England. And they become effectively white Anglo-Saxons. You can be Irish, you can be whatever. Effectively, once you're second generation, or even first generation, you're kind of enjoying the same privilege as white Anglo-Saxon. You can even intermarry with them pretty easily. There was laws in this country, especially in the state of Virginia, and in the South, where if you were from the African-American race, you could not intermarry with somebody who was considered Anglo-Saxon, Caucasian, white, whatever. You know, I just saw this post earlier today that the term white didn't even exist until 1681. Didn't even exist. So somebody had to, when you encountered blacks, you had to invent a scenario where what you need to do now is redefine who is the privileged person. Redefine who's the European, because you're starting to get mixed people. You know, you get Native Americans, you're getting all these different people. The Native American can, in one generation, can be white. You know, they come out the sun, the skin get a little lighter, they have straight hair, they intermarry with a white person, and they're enjoying white Caucasian society. And and that's probably the greater sense on how a lot of Native Americans lost their culture, because there were so many more advantages for a person to speak English as opposed to their native language, and to dress like an Englishman, and to farm and exchange goods with other Europeans was a lot easier if the person was thought to be also European and not Native American. So this is some fresh stuff. This is not stuff that just went away. This is stuff that's still relevant to certain people in the formation of this country. Native Americans and African Americans were marginalized, were sidelined. Then you get new people coming over, new immigrants, and they may or may not, or they're probably not even interested in this history until 9/11 happened. And, Islam, some Muslims did this. And the next thing you know, this ain't good either. You ain't good either, you know. Or maybe you are good with some, but then some others maybe not, and then some of them keeping it secret. Who knows? You know, and then everybody has their own way of dealing with that also, you know. But the one thing about it, if you come from a Muslim country, you have all of these huge countries over there where you can trade with them. You can send goods back and forward. You can bring money back and forward. You have something else that you come from that you can kind of rely on, you know. Whereas the African American has nothing. He can't go back to Africa. African American is not from Africa. African American don't speak one African language for maybe 10 generations. They never spoke any or knew of, for that matter, to even speak of it, to learn to speak it. Any African language. Just didn't have any knowledge of anything. So only thing we do is just call ourselves African American. That's the only thing that's African about us, other than our hair texture and our skin tone. For the most part, our behaviors are European. we behave also like Anglo-Saxon Caucasian people, more than we behave like African people. Therefore, we identify more with those groups. Now, is that right or wrong? No. I'm not saying that any of this stuff is right or wrong. I'm just saying that this is the shape that we're in now, because now we have so many immigrants that's come, and they're voting. And it's not necessarily the African American, because we've always been here and we've been getting along since 1969 better. I'm not going to say beautiful, but the stuff that's resurgent is because we have so many non-white people in the country now. I'm not blaming them, but I said these people, the large group of non-white people are scaring the Anglo-Saxon male who was in charge. Pretty much uncontested. Black people didn't give white people too much troubles because they knew that they could end up getting hanged or skinned alive or burned or bombed or house burned down. I remember when my parents first moved in a certain neighborhood in the suburbs, people came through the neighborhood and basically basically attacked everybody's mailbox in cars that was parked on the street. The windshields got knocked open. Rocks got thrown into the car. Eggs and all kinds of debris was thrown all over the cars and tore up the mailbox. It just came through the neighborhood basically at night while people were sleeping. This is in 1972 or 1970, whatever. I forget exactly the year. So this is not way, way down the trail here. This is somewhat, relevant, And that's only because a person got to a position where they could afford to kind of come out into a better area and purchase a home. And that person just was not the right type of person. So we are not too far removed from what we see going on today, where basically kids are getting gunned down in the street by other kids. That tells me that they learned this from somebody, because they were not there in 1968. They were not there during the Civil Rights Movement. They were not there during times where there was civil unrest. Somebody had to teach them how to be racist. Somebody had to pass that on. Somebody had to say, be in the house, speaking on the privileges of others and how they didn't like it and how they wish they could do something about it. Then finally what you get is Donald Trump appears on the scene. And there's a big plan. It's not a little plan, it's a big plan behind the scenes. This ain't just Donald Trump. This is a secret group of people. And it's not just in this country. It might be multiple countries. And we can probably get a good idea exactly which countries are those. Those are the countries that's blowing up people and bombing people right now. And people that's in other countries pretending like they're good guys. Saying, okay, don't follow the United States anymore. Don't vote for Hillary Clinton. Vote for our guy, Donald Trump. Because he's one of us. We got a secret agreement. And instead of supporting our allies our traditional allies like we have been doing, France, and then even recently Germany, because before the Germans were the bad guys. Okay, now the Russians are bad. And then, the Russians had a chance to be the good guys, but now the Russians are the bad guys again. By their own actions. They chose it. I mean, as an American, I hate the fact that these guys purposely meddled in our election. Whether I was for Trump or not, I would be upset that these guys had the audacity. They had the nerve to try to put us in check, to try to assert their will on us and win. I don't know about anybody else, but that should tick the average American person off. And I'm concerned that it doesn't tick some Americans off. So what does that tell me? The dumbing down of America is complete. Russians are smarter than us now. It used to be Americans were smarter than the average Russian, but I'm going to say this. I'm going to say a lot of foreign countries are smarter than Americans now. And the reason I say that is because we used to know when we were getting attacked. We used to know where the bad people were. And now we can get attacked. And we're too dumb to even know that we're getting attacked. And when I say we, I don't mean some of us. I mean that everybody, it should be common sense. I mean, for example, you're no stronger than your weakest link. So just because some of the people kind of know we're being attacked doesn't mean that we're strong as a country. Because the majority of the people might not realize that we're being attacked. And at the time and this is the thing about it, at the time we were being attacked, the majority of people didn't know that we were getting attacked. That's the part that's scary. Not the fact that you can eventually figure it out 2 years later, 1 year later, or whatever. But when you can actually do something about it on the fly. We used to be like that. And somebody was doing something as a country, we could easily kind of realize, okay, that guy trying to put an okie doke on us. And we could kind of rally as a group and un-okie doke ourselves. But at this moment, we have so many different factions. We're so mad at each other over things like, is homosexuality right or wrong? Is abortion right or wrong? Is gay rights or whatever right or wrong? I think those are some of the key issues, but I think it's should we have religious zealots making policy in this country? And I come from a religious background. I come from a very Christian kind of background. So I'm not saying that it's wrong, because I think it's good to have a moral group of people in the country. I think it's right. It makes the country strong when the country has very good moral statute, when they have some integrity. I think that makes us stronger as a culture. But also, when we start making our religion, because a religion is a belief, it's not facts. It's just a system where we say, we're going to adhere to this, we're going to take this as fact. But this country was wise in the fact that they didn't want to assert their beliefs on others, the separation of church and state. In that sense, the so-called founding fathers were wise to separate that. Because in Europe, what was happening was a lot of wars was happening, a lot of problems was happening, based on whether the king was going to be Catholic, or whether the king was going to be Protestant, Anglican, whatever little denomination that this particular cult had, which one is the king going to be? Because other people started to get beheaded. Kind of like what's happening in the street today, when people are getting gunned down and choked down in the street. The disenfranchised, the president's in charge, so the disenfranchised people is getting jacked over. Because you got people, that's what happens when religion starts taking over. They start getting jacked over, and what happens is eventually the other group's going to rise up. And there's going to be chaos and revelry and fighting. Now, when this election comes up, there is not going to be any kind of race war. I'm just going to clear that up right now. Don't no black people want to fight nobody. The only people that want to fight people is the people who see themselves losing privileges. That's used to be GOP, but now I call them the Trump party. They see that Trump's not doing well in the polls. They knew that Trump was there tentatively anyway, probably illegitimately. They didn't feel a mandate. They didn't feel like the country was behind them from the beginning. So they've been talking this since forever. Okay, and that's what happens when you're the weaker group and you're in fear, and somehow you tricked yourself. You did a trick to get power. Because when you do a trick to get power like that, what you have to do is oppress. I didn't say you should do it. I didn't say it might happen. You must do it to keep power. Now, you have to tell yourself if you're on the other side of that equation. If so, for example, if you're a Democrat, these people want to keep power. Are we prepared to defend ourselves? Because they are going to do it. Because that's what happened during the American Civil War. During the American Civil War, what happened was they seceded. There was rumors at the end of Barack Obama when they thought Trump was going to lose that Texas was going to secede. Now, that don't mean Texas was going to secede. What that actually means is that there was a certain group of people in Texas that's the majority of people, Republicans. It's basically a red state. But that might be turned into a blue state or a dark purple state pretty soon. Because some of the stuff that Trump's doing is just beyond. I mean, it's just, the dude done gone too far, man. But just in case he hasn't gone too far and he has enough people that's willing to go too far with him, there is a good chance that some secession might happen. Following in the next 60, we're talking 60 days here. We're not talking a large amount of time. We're talking 60 days. There is a good opportunity that secession might happen. But will there be a race war? No. It's going to be a political war. That's what it's going to be, a political war, not a race war. Because you got some gun toters that's black too, and Hispanic and whatever else. They don't care that people are living in cages. You're Hispanic, but they don't give a doggone that some other Hispanics is living in cages right now for the last 4 years. With COVID-19 running rampant, probably dying all over the place. It's not me and my people. I don't give a doggone. What they care about, because what you do is you get one person on one side, you get another person on the other side. You take a side. You know, people get so enthralled about their political view that they take a side. And then once they take that side, it's very difficult for them to leave that position and go neutral. The tendency is to become more, this is just mass hysteria, mass insanity. Basically what it is usually what happens when society goes into chaos. You know, just like we have a pandemic every so often, society goes into chaos also, equally as often. And it's not everybody, it's just a certain group. You know, some people just as soon as stuff break out, they're going to just jump on the ship, go straight to Canada somewhere. Get the heck out of Dodge, you know. I don't need this. You know, you got some people that's going to be like that. And then you got another group of people that's going to be all about, this is my country, God in America, the flag. It's a Christian country. You know, they're going to be looking for any opportunity they can find to do exactly what that boy did out in the Midwest, kill somebody. Be looking for that opportunity. They're going to be looking for that opportunity to get busy with their First Amendment right. And they're going to not, because black folks ain't got no power, I don't think they're going after black folks. They're going after white, powerful politicians. It's like they went after Hillary. People throw her in the jail. That's what they're going after first. Anybody powerful, they're going to try to eliminate you, probably by any means necessary. I'm just going to get a warning right now. So, you're going to need something more than a security guard. You can probably need your own little situation, or you're going to need to get some kind of political power to protect against that ahead of time. I don't think it's smart to wait till you're in a situation, because in situations like this, the person who makes the first move has a big advantage. And the person that's on the side of the majority and the side of the people who can change the sway because they just don't agree, that person also has a big advantage. But that momentum happens in time. Because what you have is you have certain families where one person is a Republican, staunch Trump supporter. The other person's a staunch Democrat. And they might be brothers and sisters, aunts and uncles, mama and daddy, husband and wife. That's going to be, and see, that's what makes things problematic. That's actually what's making this thing problematic. It's because these people, not black people, have not figured out how they're going to handle it. They didn't figure out how they was going to handle it when Trump was saying this stuff. Matter of fact, CNN and all these people, they were laughing. They were playing it down like, oh, isn't this funny? And a lot of black people was like, oh my gosh, this is scary as I don't know what. White people are doing some crazy junk all of a sudden. They can go back to what they was used to doing, because everybody can think of. There's people who are still alive now. Me one. But somebody who got killed by, by some racist white people. I mean, I got people in my family. So killed, murdered by racism. I mean, this is something that's still fresh on some people. This is not something that the last generation. Yeah, some of those people have died that remember that, but a lot of us are still living. Now, a lot of youngsters don't know about that. They out there playing PlayStation and Game Boy, and they don't really, they're playing with their little buddies. We went to high school, played football together, everything's good. They're in a whole different space. They don't remember any of that until they talk to somebody because they see something on television that bothers them. Then they ask uncle or auntie or mama or daddy, well, what exactly did happen during the civil rights movement? Well, daddy told me, because maybe the person was kind of young, that this was going on. Or maybe the person was old enough to know what's going on. Or maybe the person was in the civil rights thing. Not everybody is like 75 years old that remember that. Some blacks that remember that is in their young 50s or older 50s. Quite a few, actually. So, and quite a few were at the funerals of people who died because some races attacked somebody. Or there's pictures of the guy on the wall, and people say, well, who is that? That's Uncle so-and-so. What happened? Well, some racist people did this to him and killed him. Shot him off the porch right in front of his children. Oh, wow, that happened to Uncle such and so? Yeah. Okay. So they know that story because they see the picture on the wall because that was that person's brother or that person's father or somebody like that, uncle or somebody. So this is not something that's just a lot of people don't deal with, especially if you're in the South. You probably do have some thing that happened like that that's still fresh in the memory. It's still there. You might have even known the person. So it's not like, we talking about nothing here. You're talking about something. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is I've been kind of talking about everything except painting. I've been painting on the background while I'm doing it. I guess I decided to have this conversation while I'm painting a snake. Appropriately, because that might be what's in the White House right now. It might be a snake there. And he has the tree of death. Not of good and evil, because he's already past that. He's got that. What he's trying to administer now is the tree, not the tree of life, the tree of death. Because in order to have life, in order to have something, you have to also have the opposite of that, right? You define something by the opposite. You define love by hate. How much do you love me? By how much I don't hate you. You know? The whole idea of the camera was so that everybody could get their picture. You didn't have to be rich to be remembered. Now the average middle class guy could just jump up and just say, okay, I'm in the camera studio now. And now my grandchildren are going to be able to see what I look like. I mean, I have people in my family from the 1800s and not the 17, but the 1800s, where when photography was introduced to the United States, who was able to take advantage of this new thing called photography that hit. And when that happened, you had something invented called a photographer. And the photographer didn't start out as the landscape photographer, the sports photographer, the fashion photographer, or the events photographer. He started out, well, the events because wars, he was covering wars because that's what the kings did. So people wanted to know, guys might go out and die, so look how brave I was. Hey, look, this guy took my picture just before I went out and got gunned down by the cannons. Was stabbed up by a bunch of lances and spears and swords and whatnot, But nonetheless, most of those guys didn't really get hurt too much, Most of it is the poor people that got hurt because the aristocratic people had armor and they had lances and they had all kinds of interesting ways to kill the poor people because they could afford it. The little poor fellow, he didn't have all that, man. He had to go out there with just with his battle axe or something and whatever that he could, that his country could afford him, whatever his king could equip him with. And often these very wealthy people would ride out with their lances and their coats of mail and their breastplates on, and they just ride out and jack up a whole lot of peasants, basically, that was serving as infantrymen in the king's army. And of course, once you killed enough of these the peasants, and they won't nobody to protect the aristocrats, then the aristocrats can either grab the other aristocrat, which is his cousin probably, distant cousin, but nonetheless it was his cousin. Okay, we're not going to kill you, we're just going to put you in the dungeon for causing trouble, but we're going to control your money. But the guys who paid with their life, those are the poor class people. But it got to be the point where the poor class could actually take their picture. That happened a lot during Civil War. The Civil War guys would go posing with their little swords and stuff like that, and possibly go out to war the next day and get shot down with a hail volley of bullets, and cannon fire. But nonetheless, the picture was taken, and we can look at it now and say, oh, that's a Civil War picture. That's a guy posing with his little sword and musket or his little long rifle or whatever before he went out and got jacked up, fighting a rich man's war. The bottom line is that regular people was able to start preserving their pictures for the first time. And that's basically what photography was. It was for the middle class people who couldn't afford a painting. And in the meantime, rich people were still getting their portraits painted because they didn't want a black and white picture, because that's all they had was black and white technology. They wanted color. They wanted to show off their silk that was imported from the Orient, you know, they called the Orient at the time, which is Japan and China, India, and place, you know, all these Persian rugs and, you know, all this stuff they had in their castle, you know, that they basically looted from places that they invaded, essentially. But nonetheless, sometimes they were trading and sometimes they were looting, you know. Depends on if you were Mayan or Inca or whatever, you know. Or, you know, you was a country that could halfway fight back pretty good. You might not have got jacked up as bad. If your country was kind of primitive and you couldn't handle that cannon, well, your chunk just got taken. You know? It just took. That was just all to it. You ain't had much of a choice. You know? So that's basically how photography got invented. And photography it was basically portraiture. So people can preserve themselves for future generations to know what they did, you know, essentially. That's basically what was happening. And then, of course, you know, you had, like I say, men going to war, so then you had guilds of people, and they would hire an artist and say, okay, we're a part of this society. And you could see that with like some of like Rembrandt's work, you know, where he had the different groups which is simply pose that were wealthy. So instead of it just being kings, you had wealthy groups affording artists to be able to preserve. And then you had events in history where people said, look, this war happened, like the raft of let's see, Jericho. With the raft, what's the one with the raft where some people got stranded at sea and they had to revert to cannibalism? Or was that Delacroix? Which one is that? Anyway, then you had Goya, you know, with his political stuff, with certain revolutions when you had, you know, people getting killed, you know, and he was able to, he was the first journalistic kind of artist. So everything that we do with cameras today, be it the film cameras or still cameras, was getting done by the artists in the old days. And the artists had a very functional, they made a lot of money because there was no cameras. So it was the only way to preserve communication, because most people was illiterate. Not a lot of people could read. You know, some people could read, but not a lot. And it was the only way to preserve information. For example, with Delacroix, with the massacre at Chio, it was a massacre where the Muslim people came in, and it was basically a battle between the Christians and the Muslims. And basically, I believe Chio was somewhere in, then you had Siberia, you had basically Eastern European countries that were half Christian, half Muslim. And they were basically kind of civil warring, or just neighbors, you know, people, other countries in close proximity. They would invade, you know, and basically murder everybody, you know. And I believe, and he got in some trouble. They said, well, should this be, by this point, the artist was rock stars. A visual artist was like at the place of Paul McCartney, John Lennon, Elvis Presley, you know, Michael Jackson, you know, Beyonce, Jay-Z. They was at that level. Musical artists were not as put up like that. Now it's the opposite. Musical artists has got the top billings. This is the way technology works mostly. Availability. And visual artists, painters, and of course people who make movies, of course to make movies it takes a lot of work, a whole company. You know, they get a lot of money because they sell a lot of tickets. So it just goes on and on like that. But the visual artist, the painter, is not really in that position like they used to be. You know, we only preserve it out of tradition. Okay, Keith Wilkerson, what's up, Keith? How you doing? I'm waving back, man. And so, you know, so that's kind of how art's been moving. You know, that's how transitions in culture has changed. And so now I've actually done some more work on the tiara. I kind of liked it blocked in a more gestural form. I'm going to let this, I might do a little refined painting on this a little bit. I'm going to let this layer dry, and then I'm going to paint over that with another layer later, because I want to paint this wet onto dry. I don't want to do too much modeling wet on wet, because it's going to start looking gray. And I don't really want this to look gray. And I'm going to go back to that kind of like gestural, because I don't want it to be too refined. Because there's no information to have it refined, but I'm going to do some more refined painting later. And I might just let that dry the way it is. I don't know, but I need to look at it a little bit and kind of see where I'm at, because there's getting to be less and less to, in this particular painting session, there's getting to be less and less to paint. Because I got a lot of wet paint on this, and I don't want to paint too much. I mean, I could do some little painting into the background, little dabs here and there where I think it needs to be, but for the most part, there comes a certain time where you've done enough, and it's time to stop, even though you may have some more time left in your day or whatever. And I kind of got used to doing these lives where they're about 4 hours before Facebook just kind of cuts you off. And I've gotten too used to that, and I don't necessarily have to have these sessions go 4 hours. It is quite long. I don't even know how many people sit there the whole time with me. I guess I should ask some people. How long do you actually stay, you know? However, I'm going to let this kind of like dry till tomorrow. And then I'm going to come back in tomorrow with and just refine and sharpen all of these brush marks, sharpen all of my images even more. As you see, if you've been following this and looking at my older videos, how this has progressed, and through every session it becomes more and more refined until it looks different in every by the end of every session it looks different. Or if you look at the beginning of every session, it looks different. So and that's how I work. I just refine and fine, and it looks different. It looks better, hopefully, with every session, until finally you get to a state where you go, you know what, it's done. Looks good. This is what I want. And you sign it and date it. And then, like I say, after I pronounce it done, and after I sign it, I generally will let this sit for at least 48 hours, sometimes 72 hours. Make sure it's dry to the touch everywhere. Then what I would really start doing is examining it to make sure it's completely dry everywhere. And at that point, and then I would determine whether it needs another 24 to 48 hours. And then if I think it needs whatever amount of time, sometimes I wait about a week, then I'll add my, I oil the whole painting out, create my satin oil on it. Now, sometimes I do put Dumar varnish on top of that. Dumar varnish is a type of varnish that is basically not so much done for visual aesthetics. I usually do that with the oil out layer. I create my visual aesthetics with that because I want that permanent. That is a permanent satin finish. Now, a temporary sheen or luster that you put on your painting is with something called Dumar varnish. And what that's done, that's basically a protective clear layer, and it's, I don't know if it's water soluble or alcohol soluble, but it's a solution that you can use. I never washed it off before, but conservators use it. And you can literally, say for example, the painting has been hanging in your house for 50 years. And say it's over a fireplace and soot, and you have like gas lanterns and soot and all this stuff has gotten all over the painting over time from your fireplace and gas lantern. And there's a buildup of dust that's basically stuck to the painting, and you need to clean it. So the Dumar varnish is there to cause, as a barrier, so that that dust doesn't actually get into the paint itself. And it's made so you can literally just wash it off and then clean all that dust off, because the dust is in that layer. The dust is not on top of that layer or stuck to that layer, but the dust is not on the actual paint layers. And then you simply reapply a new coat of Dumar varnish, and it's good for another period, and hopefully you won't store it by a fireplace or somewhere where it's picking up a heck of a lot of soot and dust and stuff like that. But for the most part, in the average house, you almost don't need a Dumar varnish, because the average modern house is electric heat, electric lights. And sometimes you can get the UV coats put on top, and that protects it if you know that it's going to be a lot of sunlight coming through a window, hitting the colors. A lot of these colors are sun fast. In other words, a lot of the colors that I select in my palette, you see me with a lot of cadmiums, you see me with a lot of certain colors, they are permanent colors. In other words, you can keep this thing can hit a lot of sun, and these colors are not going to change, fade, or shift or alter too much at all. They just, because that's why I pick them. I don't just pick them because of the color harmony, or I don't pick them because certain tones blend good, and that's why I pick them, because they are safe colors. Permanent colors, the colors don't shift, they don't change. The colors are some of the most premium type of paints that you can, pigments that you can purchase because of that. So you don't really have to worry about too much sun fading with an oil painting. You really don't. However, you can also, just if you really, really are that type of person, that control freak, and you really want to have a quality painting, you can coat it with some type of UV coat. Now, a lot of times people use UV coats for G-clay prints. You know, that's a latex type of ink that goes over top of canvas. And in that case, it's these little nozzles spraying out pigment, you know, very fine on top of latex. And it's such a fine piece of pigment, and a lot of times those pigments are not archivable pigments. When I say archivable, I mean not lasting 5 years or 10 years, but something that's going to last 100 years, at least 50 years, you know, without looking weird, you know. Have you ever seen paintings or prints it's a print, but it's printed on canvas, but it's framed, and somebody has it looking like it's art, and it's about 20 years old, and it's in a garage sale. So it's been in somebody's dirty garage where they've been drilling stuff, and smoke and dust, everything's gotten over it. The paint looks all dull, or it's been, you know, mildew's been getting on. Who knows what's happening? But a lot of those paintings look, the paint looks dull. Most likely it's a print, and it's not actually paint, oil paint. Now, sometimes you have acrylic, and with acrylic, they try to make acrylic look like oil. But why not just paint in oil? Why paint in acrylic to make it look like oil? However, the acrylic is kind of like a plastic, you know? It's kind of like a malleable, you know, acrylic. I think acrylic stays flexible for the most part, depending on how thick you put it on. but I think. The problem with acrylic, I think, is that it tends, as it ages, it looks matte, it looks dull. You have to put clear coats on it to make it actually maintain some type of sense of luster, which is sitting on top. The difference with oil is the luster, the oil is embedded in the pigment. So it's like the pigment is encapsulated. Each little dust fiber of pigment is encapsulated inside of the oil that's turned into a crystal. And it's very, very, very shiny, because it's linseed oil that dries for the most part fairly clear. Has a little bit of a yellowy tint to it. Now, that's why some people like to use Stan oil, because Stan oil is super refined linseed oil that dries virtually clear. So you're going to have a very jewel-like effect in your colors that ain't going to ever go away. So 100 years from now, it will still look jewel-like if you build your paint correctly. Depending on if you want that type of finish or not. Whereas with acrylic, it's going to look like dull plastic that's aged. The color's going to still look vibrant. The color's still going to look good. But your finish on the top, especially when you get a little dirt. Now, the great thing about acrylics is that you can get a little weak soap, or some type of cleanser, cleaning agent, and you can wipe with a clean towel or sponge. You can kind of clean your painting, that gets dirty. You can clean it that way. And I think you can kind of do the same thing with oil paint. But acrylic, that's one way you can clean that, but you're still going to have to, at some point, treat it with some type of clear coat. Whether that's a spray-on clear coat or a roll-on clear coat or a paint-on one. And again, that sits on the top. Now, some people with acrylics do mix a certain amount of, gloss medium into the actual acrylic, which already has some type of medium like glue in it. So you're adding glossy glue to the already glue that's in the colors of acrylic. So how much of that can you add before everything is translucent? Nothing is rich, dense pigment. So, you can create all that with acrylic. But I went to the Guggenheim about a year or so ago, and I saw paintings that I saw, 20 years prior to that. And, from, classic work that you'll see in any art book. I have some art books here. And they look more dull than they used to look. The pictures still look good. I'm sure they're conserving the pictures well. I don't know if the Guggenheim was darker than what I remembered it back when I first went there, but a lot of the paintings, older paintings that's been there a while, did not have that punch. Now, when I say a lot of them, the ones done in acrylic. The ones done in oil, however, some of them lacked, and then a lot of them was okay. And like I say, when I look at paintings, I take note to that. Like, for example, in a Virginia Fine Arts Museum, I think they have Edward Hopper paintings there. And it's quite a nice collection of Edward Hopper. And some other paintings, American paintings around painters that lived around his time, was also, some of their work was featured in the same exhibit as his. I think the exhibit is still up now because COVID, I don't know what COVID did. I don't know, because I haven't been able to go. I haven't gone since COVID. So nevertheless, he painted in oil. And his oil paints, actually, the paint looked pretty, the quality of the paint looked pretty good still. Now, you're talking about paintings that was done in 1940s and 1920s, maybe even, through I'm just guessing, I don't remember exactly what Harper's period it was, but I think it's somewhere around the 1920s through the 1940s. Maybe even towards 1800s, but somewhere in the first part of the 1900s. So you're talking about paintings that are about 100 years old. Painted in America, basically. And he traveled all over America, including Mexico, at resort areas, and took basically paintings of the resort areas and hotels and places that basically rich white people went to. But he also, I think, painted some, I think he did a photograph of a black man after World War II, you know, kind of later in his career. You know, he traveled a lot with his wife painting. A lot of the subject matter is his wife or his girlfriend or whoever, the woman that stuck with him the most and traveled with him. However, the oil paint, the way he painted, held up very nicely compared to some of the acrylic paintings that my last trip to New York, that I saw of some of the people from not even as far back as Harper, but they painted in acrylic. And of course, I'm not looking at this work side by side. I'm looking at it different times, different places. I'm just, in my memory, my impression was some of the acrylic work, the luster had come out of them some. It just didn't have the same vibrancy they had when the paintings were younger. Whereas the oil paintings, especially like the Edward Hopper, I'm going to go with him because that's in my city right now. That's an exhibit that I've spent some time looking at. I've gone several times looking at that work. The colors, and even some of the other artists there in that same era, the colors are still very vibrant on those paintings. Now, likewise, there's some paintings that's done in acrylic exclusively, where the colors look great. Now, is it based on the conservator, or is it based on the craft of the artist, on how they built those acrylics, and you know how they applied those acrylics to you know, because it's not so much of working in acrylics or working in oil, it's how you work in it, how you apply your tones. You know, like I said, I work in layers and build up. Some people don't. They just go left to right and that's it. And once they get to the right side, the painting is done. You know, it's very detailed starting in the left, and then it continues to be detailed all the way through to the right. The same amount, extreme detail. And most of the time they've taken the time to do a very meticulous drawing, and they're basically just rendering very religiously left to right. They're probably using some type of, you know, cheat method as well to paint, you know. However, it's one layer, and I don't know if those hold up as good as multiple layer paintings, you know, where you build them up and you have oil and you have sheen embedded in the paint and you have textural stuff going on. I think those paintings hold up. And see, right now I'm going this way and that way with this black in here, and because I'm going to add some more to this painting later. But I think as for right now, what I'm looking at, I can, I'm just adding little details because basically for today, I hope I'm not boring you too much. I'm basically finished. You know, there's not a whole lot more. There's not a whole lot more I can do to this painting in terms of actually what I want to paint on the front. Right now I'm painting some stuff on the side. All I'm doing is really enhancing some brush strokes that I've already made earlier to the side, just so the sides, because it's a gallery wrap, I don't want that paint to look wimpy either. I want the paint to look quality. I want the paint to look rich and thick and well applied to the canvas. You know, well applied, you know, to it, you know. I don't want any, you know, this is going to be a quality painting. You know, all of my paintings are going to be quality paintings. All of them. I don't paint anything that's half-stepping. First of all, I don't do that. So this is something that I actually do to all of my paintings. I just go through them and I just kind of make sure that, you know, it looks good from the side just as much, and the top and the bottom as well, just as good as it looks from the front, or almost as good. Let's put it that way, because I don't put as much attention on these sides as I do on the front, because it's not really meant to be looked at from the side. Just knowing that you're sitting on your couch in your living room and you're off to an angle looking at it, you're going to see that. So that tone that you see should look good. It should look good. I mean, it should look good, because, I mean, once it's done, right? And it should look good. And it does look good. So I'm just going now around and whatever I have on my palette, whatever paint colors I have here, I'm just picking them up and just kind of enhancing these tones that I have on the canvas. You know, sometimes what happens is I don't like to push out, when I'm at this level, I don't like to push out extra paint because it's wasteful. Because I know that I'm gonna have to store the paint till tomorrow. Sometimes the paint is not usable when you have to store it to the next day, because it starts to set up. You know, once that thing leaves the tube, once you open the tube up, this paint will start to set up on you. And when that starts to happen, it's just not as good, you know. It's just not going to, you're going to have dingleberries in it. Just have a film on it. Film just not, the paint is just not going to be as good as it would be if it was fresh out the tube. So I don't have much painting to do, and I'm painting this. I don't like to pull too much extra paint out. So I'm just kind of using, if I have the tone, I'll use it and find a place where I can put it on the side. If I don't have the color, I'll just wait until another day. I do have that extra paint there in that color, and then I'll apply that. So that looks pretty good right there, like that. It just so happens that I do have that tone today, and I am going to use it. Kind of build up some really nice gallery wrap color. Because like I say, really it's really about, I'm not even going to say 20 more hours on this altogether, because these are not real hours. I mean, I'm not bare damn painting, because I'm sitting here talking to you guys. So this is not by the hour painting here. This is, whenever you see me painting online like this is not my real painting mode. Because my real paint mode, I got my underwear on. That's about it. I'm slinging the paint, and I'm focused, and I'm really painting. I mean, I'm getting off, man. And when I'm doing this, I'm just basically doing this. This is my Facebook paint. this is not my real speed. It's not, this is my Facebook speed when I'm trying to chit chat and talk and paint. And believe it or not, look pretty at the same time, even though you may say, man, this guy looks like a bum every time he comes online painting. Well, it's hard to oil paint and not look pretty. It's hard to do that, you know. Because oil paint, first of all, the paint stays wet a very long time, especially when it gets on your clothes. I mean, you can't go walk through the rest of your house and sit on furniture. You're going to have paint all over your furniture. You know, you're going to spend like about $4,000 or $5,000 furniture set up. You know, you got your nice little couch there. You got your easy chair. You got a little chase or something. You know, it's all tight. Then you go, oh, I'm tired, and then plop down on it, get paint all over it. Your $5,000 living room set is jacked up. Then you gotta go buy another one. See, that ain't no good right there. So basically, I'm kind of like Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood. What happens is when I go into the rest of my house, because I got a home studio, so when I go into the rest of my house, I got to change out. Kind of have to change out. Then I can walk through the rest of the house and interface with normalcy. Otherwise, if I got to take trash out, answer the door, get mail, I'm walking out like this. You know, my neighbors are like, what the world's wrong with that guy? It always looks like he got like house paint on him all the time. You know? But I think they know. They see, because I build my canvases outside, so they see me building, and then I photograph them on overcast days. I take them outside, and I photograph them. So I think most of my immediate neighbors, or most of the people who are my neighbors who live in the neighborhood, if they see me going out with paint all over, I think they know what's up. Now, people that just driving through to visit, and they don't know what's going on. They just like, who's that fella there that's out there? And sometimes I got out there in my pajamas, you know. I just said, forget it, man. I want to stay relaxed because, you know, I'm a painter, so most of the time I'm not relaxed. So I want to stay relaxed as much as possible. So I just got out of bed, and I'm going to check the mailbox. And I don't care if I still got my little pajamas with the little Mickey Mouse on it or whatever. I just don't care. And plus, it's COVID-19. You can't go. I mean, good gracious, man. You know, I'm just going 25 feet out to my mailbox, you know. Or going out and put the trash out or something. You know, give me a break here. You know, why are we so overcritical as neighbors here? So that's my attitude about it. Okay, so I'm just really just painting the top, looking at the top and sides, and I'll just hit it like this every once in a while at the end of a paint session. And usually that's enough for me to get through the whole session. We get through the whole painting and have pretty good wraparound. Coverage, you know what? I don't really want any white now from the original canvas showing. I don't want any of that. But at the same time, like I said, I get my paints, I put them in the refrigerator. I get them ready for another day. So I do that also, because the refrigerator would kind of would stop or slow down, seriously slow down the cool, because this doesn't evaporate like acrylic. Acrylic would just continue to evaporate. You can put it in plastic, it'll slow it down, but it's going to be kind of evaporating once it comes out the tube. It's going to just start getting harder and harder. Acrylic is, once you open that tube up, you better be putting that thing to the canvas. Or else you're going to just have a big hunk of plastic sitting there. However, with oil, you can kind of put it in the refrigerator and slow down the process, and slow down your the catalyzation process. And basically, it can stay in there 2 or 3 days to a week. And you come back and your oil is still, your oil paint is still workable. You can still use it. Now, some colors, they just set up faster than others. And so sometimes it was a little too stiff and you can't use them, but most of the time you can't. Okay, so I think I'm going to have to call it done for today.